Hello. Hello, there we are. We are here and starting to get started. I've got Teresa in the background and we're waiting for Peter to join us. Hopefully he does. I'm going to give you a quick intro, real quick. So, we had this great idea to talk about these things, and um, we've got so much to say about these. What the point was that we've all got our favorites and why we but do these things actually create customer centric strategies? And so, just to kick it off, Teresa, give us a little bit about your background so that we know how you approach these things.
Yeah, so I'm an industry agnostic marketer and I've brought products across the board to market. I've been a part of a independent board game publisher, and so we brought a brand new board game, just the concept to market, and had one of the best Kickstarters of all time. I've also been a part of B2B and brought those products to market. And then, done, big ticket B2C items like IVF and things like that. And so that's kind of where I've been and the path I've trod.
Nice. Peter, tell us a little bit about you.
Uh, Serial entrepreneur. I'm also an agnostic marketer. I've been in beverage, automotive, B2B SaaS, pretty much every category with clients in the tri-sector. So Department of Defense, Fed Civ, government sector, nonprofit sector, and the private sector. Right now, I'm a consultant for solopreneurs to publicly traded behemoths. And yeah, it's easiest just to go look at my LinkedIn profile. Otherwise, I'm going to ramble forever.
Fair enough. So even if no one watches this, I think that there's going to be a lot of important things that are said, and sometimes it's about the conversation. So I put together little my little chart of which three would you choose. And this came from the thought that there's always going to be a blend that's needed. You can't
Mhm.
just rely on one. And if you had to, how would you go about it? So, just kind of picking any of the top GTM motions, what what do you look at when you look at them? Like how do you evaluate these? And I just threw up some of the most popular ones.
I mean, I'm sure Peter's going to have a very similar comment to mine. I think it really depends on what's the offering and what is the existing sales funnel. How does it look like? You can't answer the same thing for the same company with a different IP, let alone like two very different businesses. Like, how's your inbound now? Like, are you all outbound motion? Because if you're all outbound now, then just saying, well, I'm going to do inbound and product led with maybe some founder led, it's not going to work. You have to see what's working now and build off of that existing strategy.
Oh, yes, similar answer, but I want to be bigger than that. I want to be better than that. I'm finding that marketers using the term "it depends" is like moist, and we've got to break that
Yes.
habit. Got to break that habit. And I guess the only way that I could make that statement is your vertical matter. Yeah, you're right. Your vertical matters, your product matters, your end customer matters,
Mhm.
but you're not doing a lot of outbound on a direct to consumer product. You might be doing ecosystem, you might be doing events. Product led doesn't work for everybody. Can a customer find an aha moment right away? Can they do a credit card swipe at 3 a.m.? So, I'd like to just lead with some examples as opposed to saying it depends. So, Leanne, throw a curveball out. What's the business? Who are we talking to?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the curveball is that I made this joke in the copy, and I don't think anyone really cared to pay it attention, but I thought it was funny, and so I'm saying it again. It's we all have favorites, whether or not it's like your kids. Like you tell your kids you don't have a favorite, but we know you do.
Mm.
We know that there's one that just grinds your gears, and you're just like, man, I've never seen this be successful, or I've only seen this be successful for just a short amount of time, and its entire success was dependent on being like sprinkling on top of the double scoops of these other two. And so if the curveball really is like, if you were competing the flavors against each other, is there a combination that is inherently the most customer centric? Why or why not?
I
And
mean,
yeah,
if
keep
you
going.
if you leave it at customer centric, if you've got the community and you're able to stir up the community and get the community in such a fever pitch that you can use them to bring it to market, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Rabid fans. Yep.
And that's where this stemmed from. Was I was in a networking call and I made a comment. I'm like, look, if you blend partner led, product led, and community led, you have a starting consent to be there. Like your customers are starting off from a point of opting into the relationship
Yep.
and on their terms. And I found that I suddenly was like, oh, if we're doing customer centric, is there a way that some of these are inherently just more likely to reduce churn? Now, if you do any of them well and it's the right customer segment and it's the right product, of course you're going to reduce churn. But if we go back to just looking at the options of the menu, can we set it up in a way such that we are getting that consent, we're getting the opt-in, we're getting the stickiness from the start or from the frameworks? Because it's sometimes, to further ramble about this, is that sometimes the framework can be so prohibitive in creating that rabid fan.
Mhm.
What do you guys think?
I'm looking at Peter, wanting him to go to first. That way I don't just steal the floor every time you make a question.
I'm not worried about it. I just topped off another webinar that Leanne laughed her way through. So I don't think these are mutually exclusive. I think they have to partner. The motions have to go together. Product led does not work without community built in. Just it doesn't. And anybody wants to fight me on that, I'm more than willing to take the DMs. Ecosystem and partners, they go hand in hand. So that's where I'm sitting with it. I lost the question.
I mean, so I think the question was like, which one causes more stickiness from the start? And I would say, with that in mind, reverse engineer, I say outbound is probably a harder sell because if they're coming to you, there's some initial stickiness just in their response. That said, if you have an incredible one-off email for outbound, and it has to be one-off because I'm a precious snowflake just like everyone else, but you're going to need to come at me with some very specific messaging to get me to respond. And you're going to need very different messaging to get Peter's attention.
You'd be surprised. You guys have a lot in common. But to that end, is that one off, that special snowflake, and that creating of that, like, it's almost like a rom com moment where you're just like, oh, it's meant for me.
The meet
That's
cute.
yeah, it's the meet cute. You need the meet cute of sales, which is more the exception than the norm. And I don't want this to come across as like bashing on sales as a GTM motion, but it has to be done. It has to be finessed.
Well, I mean, you look at like the bad rap that ABM gets because everyone wants to think that their ABM motion is great because they've got the expensive platform that does the things. The problem around that initially comes with sales and marketing being out of alignment. It happens with me getting an email that sounds like it's written for me and 10 other people with my same job title. But when you get an SDR, when you get an AE, when you get a marketing email that quotes my Instagram profile and just been like, oh my gosh, I completely identify with this, this, and this. It's like, okay, you got my attention. You're using language that I used to describe myself. And so now I feel like you've got your foot in the door. The problem is that that is just not scalable because maybe Peter doesn't have an Instagram. Maybe his isn't as quotable as mine. I say that and I don't even know if my Instagram is profile is even to be mentioned. But that said, like, you just need that sticky info, and that's going to come from different places, different people, and it's going to require a bit more finesse and grit to actually to get that hook.
So you triggered something in me, and it has nothing to do with the Instagram combativeness because I know it was a hypothetical. But GTM motions aren't the horse. You're right. Sales and marketing alignment, sales and engineering, sales and product, sales and whomever, marketing and whomever.
Yeah.
If that's not there, it doesn't matter what GTM strategy you go for because you're just going to be blowing out independent tactics from independent departments, and it's a massive exercise in futility.
Mhm.
And there's a chronic problem right now. There's always been a chronic problem, but I see it getting worse and worse as CMOs are falling on their little tiny violins, going, "Oh, woe is me! I'm doing more with less." Um, but we're confusing effort with results.
And to that point, Peter, there was a conversation I was having in an email marketing community even yesterday where someone had posted, I've increased my open rates to blank, but I can't get my click through rate to increase to this percentage. What am I not doing? And the question that me and several other people asked was, when was the last time you talked with sales? When was the last time you talked with product or customer success? Because it sounds like your offer, your CTA, your messaging is off. If they're not clicking through, you don't have the right copy and you need to reach to somebody outside of your silo because you don't have it's not compelling. It's
Agree.
not about changing the button color.
And
And I'm sorry, I want to interject so bad. So, coming back to something about this alignment theory is that also where our culture of the company is more of the manifestation of the brand than we give credit to. I think that's a crucial step that people forget is the personality of the company itself is branding. So, Peter, you were going to respond to Teresa's comment about the color of the button and the deliverability rates of getting outside of the silo of just the marketing department.
well, I mean, it's another cultural shift that I'm evangelizing, demanding happens as we get away from data and analytics and squirreling up in a corner and reading our books. Anecdotal is extremely important.
Mm.
If you're not getting the feel feedback, you're a marketer, you're buying a bunch of different trade shows, field events. If you're not asking the salespeople who they talk to and what they talk to them about, if you're not asking the salespeople, do you think this was a worthwhile expense? And you're building in the anecdotal, then you're wasting time. You're just a badge scan marketer. You're vile. Yeah, that was a personal attack on any badge scan marketer. Um, but yeah, you have to cut it out. If you have to figure out the feel of it, the vibes.
To that point, Peter, years ago, I was listening, I want to say Jasmine Star. She was talking about creating not just an ICP, but more of an actual persona and making it such a real flesh and blood person. And it's not like I'm writing to a person 35 to 44 that is male living in the Pacific Northwest, but more like, no, I'm writing to Mark, and Mark is this job. He does these things. These are his specific pain points. And if I can make it and I'm writing to this person, then I'm going to hit everybody like them and then on the periphery, and they're going to identify with that message.
Yeah.
But it's just making sure that you've got a compelling narrative and not being like, dear sir or ma'am.
Well, so that gets into the rise of story brand and jobs to be done and all these other frameworks that put the customer first and speak to, like, right now we have the convenience of speaking to the job to be done, the convenience that needs to be had or the resolution that needs to be had. I've been very outspoken about my hatred for product market fit and ICP. I think they're extremely dated concepts, and I think they are just passive mechanisms to guess, and they're very assumptive. They're offensively assumptive. As a 42-year-old male, you're going to guess what I'm interested in, or how my purchasing habits or anything else. Like you said, we're all special snowflakes. And I don't think ICP has any value. This falls back to the anecdotal. Who's buying? Where are they buying it? What's their feedback? Or- yeah.
Well, I mean, you say that, and there was a meme I saw, I think that I communicate in memes given my age. There was a write up that just said, this is the age range, it's male, they live in the UK, da 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 da. And then it showed a picture of Ozzy Osbourne and the King. And it's like they both fall within that. But I'm going to communicate to Ozzy Osbourne completely differently than I talk about Prince Charles.
And I'm not in love with ICPs, but I do want to say that for companies that are trying to find their heads from tails, it's an important first step as a thought exercise to start a dialogue and a discussion and an evolving like targeting that they need to come up with. And so for people that are like just blank slate, we've got this thing that we made because we thought it was cool. So we'll call it founder led GTM. um, I think that they are tools to progress us forward in the establishment of marketing strategy, but I don't think that they are standalone documents to be put in a library of this is how our strategy is completely defined. It should be that blend, that persona market fit instead of product market fit almost. And um, I see that you're kind of thinking through this, but that and it's all kind of a web of intertwined, like a sweater. I think of this like a marketing sweater where you have the threads. They've got to go like this. They've got to go like that, and it turns into a cohesive thing, but only with the work of making it so.
I
I
still have a
like that
problem with it.
analogy.
Yeah, but beautiful
You
analogy. I'll high five at the door on that one. But I still have a problem with it. Let's go way back. And we'll quote Plato. Our
Hmm.
need will be the real creator, or mother is the necessity of invention, or
Hmm.
necessity is the mother of invention. Why build it and then figure out who's going to come?
I
That's what
I agree.
ICP
I
is. That's what
agree.
product market fit is. That's you're building it first, and then you're
Yep.
guessing who's going to like it, who's going to want it.
But asking that question here feels disingenuous because I have been a part of teams where I came on board because the devs built something cool that they know everybody wants. And then they're just dumbfounded that they created this best in class product, but growth stalled. They're better than their competitors. So why is this not growing like gangbusters? It's like, because you're not actually telling anybody about it. You're shouting into your cave and expecting the echo to carry throughout the world,
And
and
also, yeah, the size of the market, I think, is an important part of this, is that you can have the coolest things, and maybe there's only like it's only cool to 100 people.
Just
That
don't do the tam sam sam. I can't do it. I left a behemoth because I couldn't take that anymore. This still goes back to ICP. Like your
right.
messaging is something, and your solution is something, and your coolest thing ever is something, and the range of what you're doing is something. But again, like you were alluding to, Leanne, if you're building a product that only satisfies 100 people, why are you bothering with building the product? And then
I mean,
burning cash to guess or to force feed it to people deceptively.
Yeah.
There's no place for ICP anymore.
so if you're a behemoth and you have this suite of tools and you want to launch a new one, and your engineers are like, oh hey, we really think this thing is going to work, and then they either do or don't. Like that's kind of like coming back to like how would they know if it was going to work or not? They would do customer research. Sometimes they have to build it in order to know if it's going to flop. And sometimes it is marketing dependent whether or not it flops. Earlier today there was a mention of the voice thing, how Google did the voice thing and then Apple did it later, but Apple marketed it better, so it was adopted. If we look back, same thing happened with electric cars, same thing happened with smartwatches tried to like be a fetch for like 3 iterations before the
It's
Apple
not October
smartwatch
yet. It's not October yet. Leave fetch at the door.
happened. Pry it from me. um so the point being is that like the the stuff happens, and how do we figure out how to market it better? How do we make it a thing that there is a pain for, but it just wasn't shared with the world correctly.
I swear I'm not an argumentative, jerky person, but
Do
in the
it.
case of the behemoth, I mean, you're outlining what I would consider outliers, small cases.
Mm,
The bigger thing is the behemoths figured it out. You just buy it. You just buy it. Somebody else figures out all that stuff. Somebody else built the tool with the audience, all that, and then they buy it.
right.
And you can start citing all the knockoff stuff and how it's not doing great and it's not accepted. And it's not like a Highlander thing where there can only be one. But I have yet to like Threads and Twitter. They're not and Threads, Twitter, Parlor, all Mastodon. They're not comparable, even though they're the same thing. So I don't know. I don't know. And this goes into everything. CPG. Like what Kellogg's just sold off Kellanova to Mars, like a whole snack division to them. Nobody's creating anymore. It's just either copying things with some sort of legacy virus, so it's just a cheap knockoff doppelganger, or they're buying somebody else's IP and rolling with it, maybe tweaking it and modifying it for their own. I don't buy it. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. So we were coming back to that point of engineers just making something because they think it's going to be cool and trying to establish it as a business. Because if the behemoths aren't going that route and they're merger and acquisitioning their way into having new features and products, then where are the small fries that are like, hey, I was talking to like 5 friends. We all thought this was cool, so we're just going to do it. And then they do it, whether impulsively or slowly and planned out.
Mm,
And then it either flops or, 10 other people that have the same information diet also come up with the same concept. And then it turns into a race of the small fries, like the Milwaukee sausage race. I don't know if you've ever seen one of their baseball games, but there's literally 4 sausages that race the field. And that's what it feels like startups are doing, is that they're just trying to get attention running in circles until someone buys them or there's a winner.
So fundraising rounds used to be the key for attention, and then
mm.
recently it turned into co-pilots and AI. What's the next phase for the differentiator of attention? This is why Betamax a superior platform didn't beat out VHS. We're just gonna start dating ourselves big time now. But like, what's the next thing that makes you the coolest kid
Well,
or
I
fetch?
I think, just going back to something we said earlier, which is alignment. You're going to need the marketers that are shaking hands with product and with sales. And there needs to be some tight communication because the second any of those groups silo, you're screwed. If sales isn't telling marketing and marketing isn't listening to sales, and I think there needs to be that cohesion there of them working together and them partnering with product that often gets left out of that fun handshake, then you're not going to have, lockstep. That's when you're going to end up being a small, medium company that's trying to grow. But once sales sells something that marketing told them to say or, got the messaging on, now you got customer success upset because sales sold them a pipe dream. Sales sold them products that don't exist or ways or features that don't work the way they were sold. And now you've got customer churn. But you have to end up building that whole system of everybody working together, everybody working in unison and lockstep to be able to get to the point where a larger company wants to buy you.
So are you saying we need to shed our bad selling vaporware or product promising vaporware?
I think it needs to be everybody working together. And then you have a team that like the marketers actually get into the product, because how many SaaS companies are there where the marketing team is just told, read the documentation. We may have recorded a loom on it, but you don't have access to the software. You don't actually get to fly it and be like, that's not how this works. It doesn't push into the CRM like that, or it doesn't log the information that way. And then, you get the devs go, oh crap, you did find a hole, or you did find a discrepancy in how the market is going to try to adopt it. But without everybody working together, and you'll get that a smaller group with a lot of trust, because you have to have the ability and the psychological safety to call out a team member and be like, I don't think that works the way you say it does. It's not working for me like that.
And in that seat at the table, right? I think this comes back to that the foundational go-to-market strategy needs to be established early on. There needs to be a seat at the table, and everyone. And I'm saying this, and please don't mock me. They need to be holding hands a little bit, singing "Kumbaya." Honestly, they need to be getting along. They need to be cooperating, and they need to be inclusive in a circular equal matrix to some extent. I mean, there always has to be a deal breaker, but there has to be more to it.
I agree.
Whose responsibility is it? Who's gonna create transparency and break down silos and force integration? Because right now it feels like job descriptions are the things that are forcing it, and you have product managers, product marketers, and demand gen people being squeezed into one title and doing 3 roles for 2/3 of the pay of any one of those roles. That's not a solution. That's not only is it not sustainable, it's stupid right off the bat. So if there are leadership teams that don't understand what these jobs are, don't understand what these teams are doing, can't set metrics that make sense, are responding to what the street says and not what customers are saying, how do the peons, the rest of us, make any type of influential change or cross the divide to do what you guys are asking for?
I
I,
think this
I
is a
think the
phase.
answer's in the question.
Yeah,
I'm using strong language. I'm tired. I'm sorry, guys.
No, I mean, you're strumming my pain with your fingers, my friend.
we this us three all feel this intimately,
Mhm.
and when I see that us three specifically as people with experience, insights, knowledge, and pattern recognition see this, that it is a very important thing to call out, because it's not just us. We're just the ones that are raising our hands, being like, hey, this is what's happening. Right? Like, I mean, am I crazy? Yeah, maybe, but like at the same time, like the answer is the problem, and the problem is the answer. How do we fix it? Do we go upstream? Do we make better hires? Do we coach people?
I think it
Do
starts at the top. Like everything starts at the top.
Yeah,
We're talking like whether it's the game plan, the go-to-market strategy, or data hygiene. If it doesn't matter from the top down, it doesn't matter. You can't be the boots on the ground saying this is what needs to happen, because
yeah.
you'll never be able to manage effectively up that much. You can make small changes, but you can't manage the entire strategy.
So if the leadership does not care about customer centric metrics, it does not matter how much Leanne, Teresa, Peter, John, Jane, Mary, any of us establish quality customer metrics. Is that fair?
And there we are.
So if there is like a CEO or an investor, like we're just going to go to the top, the people with the money get the most votes, right? The
Yep.
investors have to see the value in customer centric metrics, and they have to see the value in reducing churn through GTM strategies. And so is what the world needs investor education that will make you more money if we run a business in these ways. We're chasing a big rabbit hole I didn't expect us to go down, but it does seem fair.
I mean, you say this, and I've seen on the outside organizations that I have several members in, so I get lots of intel where they were bought by private equity, and that private equity started out with just, well, we just need to make more money. So it was a race to the bottom. What's the biggest discount we can offer? And then it was like, great, you're hitting pipeline numbers, but your churn is off the charts. So you're not any money ahead. And then it was like, okay, maybe let's stop. Maybe let's actually not ask the executive team what they think, and maybe let's ask the boots on the ground, what are we doing wrong, and then actually doing that work. And acronym I heard from, I'm gonna, I'm gesturing to Peter even though he can't see it. Acronym I heard from a military person was called chaos, and it was chief has another suggestion. And if you replace chief with CXO, the CEO, CFO has a great idea. It's just a suggestion. How many times does marketing get told, well, you just need to post more on Instagram. You just need to send another email. It's like, what do you mean? Why should I just send another? What is the email going to say? What is going to be the one thing that makes everybody go, oh, that's why I need this widget. That's why I need this. You have to
I
solve the
love
why.
I love military acronyms because they're very they aren't always explicit, but they're very explicit in their use of language, right? It's very clear what this is, and it's a candid pain point that's been felt. Now, GTM motions, are they all chaos?
Are they all what?
Chaos. Are they all chaos?
I
Are they
don't
all
think I don't think they're all chaos, right? And I think like, okay, let's start with founder. It depends on the founder. It depends on how well they are able to communicate with the end user. I have seen founders that have the best heart, but my God, don't put them in front of a camera.
I mean, and that's fine. That's totally fair. And that is not like a judgment or a diss. Like founders are good at finding sometimes and not good at being a face or a PR like mascot. Um, all right. So if we had to just kick someone off the island, we had to boot a GTM strategy, just be like, guys, stop doing this. It sucks. Which one do you think in reality, like not in theory, but like in reality, do you think people mess up so much that we just need to like chop it off the block? I don't know how many cliches I can add in anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the easiest one to mess up is outbound.
Peter?
I'll agree. Outbound is certainly the easiest one to mess up. But is your question about universal effectiveness, or is it about degree of difficulty?
It's
Because
about
degree of difficulty, I would go with outbound, but effectiveness, I've got other ideas.
True.
customer's point of view. Which one makes the customer feel like they're the last thing considered?
I mean, if you have an incredible outbound and you're hitting the right person at the right time with the right message, that's a closer. But I think there's a lot of variables in there.
I think partner led gives you a gap, so the customer doesn't necessarily feel like they're your customer. If you want to talk about some level of ostracization, ooh, look, I did that without stumbling. Channel could have the same effect. So there's less personalization. I mean, is that the key term you're looking for? Is personalization in a GTM strategy?
Warm fuzzies. We're going off vibes.
If we're
Okay.
going off vibes, then I'd have to say that's personalization, because if it's just a generic banal message, you're not gonna do much.
Which partner, honestly, this a 20-year experiential marketer. All my great stories come from this, but event led has no personalization. Even ecosystem led. Like all my favorites on here are the ones that I'm actually actively saying are not the right ones to do. So I love being my little conundrum, paradox, irony person.
So what I'm hearing is they're not the ones to do unless you do them.
You know what? I do possess that much hubris, but I'm gonna pause it for this particular call. But like, if you look at product led, most growth practitioners, most product led practitioners are hammers. And to hammers, everything looks like a nail.
Yep.
And so everybody here has their, not here on this call, but everybody here on this nine board has their frameworks and their go-to recipes and their game plans. And this goes back into there's no invention, there's no creativity anymore. There's panic. I've walked into way too many organizations over this past year where all the work is ad hoc. There's no themes, there's no campaigns, there's no nothing. And I'm just leaning into GTM. I've gotten away from the whole siloed teams thing just inside of marketing. And it could be a two-person team and it's
Mm.
still got these issues. So I don't know. I don't know. I've had a feeling for a very long time that marketers are lazy and they cherry pick the fun stuff. And I do consider myself a marketer and I am guilty of those things. So I have full discretion to say that about marketers. But I don't know. I feel there's discipline and ethics and structure that's missing in marketing to even get to the point of doing these strategies. There are just too many people out there that throw PLG on their resume and they've never done anything relevant to PLG. They might have worked with a PLG company, but they never done anything with it. Same thing on channel, ecosystem, partnerships. Like marketers chase buzzwords and titles
Yeah.
and don't actually do the work because it's hard and it's not fun and it's rarely glorious unless you're doing events. So I don't know.
I mean, to that effect, you need to be able to back up whatever you say with data. And oftentimes the data is the one piece that is going to be the hardest to get and to prove, to the point where we're still having conversations about attribution and what's the best way to model it. And how do you know? And each one is flawed. So then you go into that rabbit hole on all of that. And then how do you measure the fact that the times that they reached out on chat versus got the email versus converted on the ad versus
I mean, and I think that there's so what I'm hearing is that consistency trumps everything, right? Whichever one that your organization and your team is going to consistently contribute on a regular basis to is the one that is going to have the best results. And so for that sense, I think that if I had to get rid of one, unless you have like partnership heavily laid on top of it, I would boot ecosystem led because you can just get lost in a list on a website when someone is getting other messaging. They're getting stronger marketing. They're getting, all this like actual noise and activity from the other GTMs blended on top. I think the ecosystem led is the one that needs to have the most support from the most other GTM motions to be successful. Now I could be talking like completely out of bias here. So
It's
so
your
please
show, dude.
well, but if I'm wrong, I want to know I'm wrong. Like that's part of why we talk to other people. I mean, like, yeah, I had a cool thought, but am I wrong about my thought?
Well,
Got
then
to
I want to take 3 steps back then. Attribution. No, we have to get away. Attribution makes sense when more like super popular buzzwords right now, customer acquisition cost and ROI. I mean, that all makes sense. We're all trying to run leaner. But when we talk about attribution in a personal sense, one of the reasons I'm like avoiding cybersecurity in general is because it's a constant keep measuring contest. It's constant hero syndrome. And marketing, when we have to prove our worth with attribution, it has the same effect. And so we're creating these silos against other teams. We're creating these silos against our own teammates. because we're fighting over who gets credit for something. We're never focused on the goal. We're never focused on the win. There's no North Star when it comes to marketing. There's no SMART goal when it comes to marketing. There's process goals and there's neediness, greedy need. And that's, I don't know. I just think that there's like this systemic cultural issue that there's no way of breaking when mommy and daddy are pitting the kids against each other.
So to that line, should the North Star then, and I know you just said there's no North Star, should it be total revenue? And then all departments roll up to, did we hit revenue? Yes, no. If not, what can each team department do to help drive that metric?
Yeah, I would love that. I evangelize that on a regular basis. But if you ever want to see a marketer go flush and all the blood leave their body, tell them they have to carry a quota. Tell them they have a revenue metric, that they can't just put stuff at the top of the funnel, regardless of the quality of it.
But then
Like,
they just kill the entire top of funnel. Have you noticed that happen? I've seen it happen lots of times
what do you mean?
where I've literally had leadership say, "I'm responsible for this much, and so therefore we are not caring about social. We don't care about blah blah blah. We don't care about X, Y, and Z because it's top of funnel, and I need to get that revenue in the door right now." And
But
Yeah,
so
pushing back on that, I have seen organizations say, hey, organic social, you are responsible for X number of clients this quarter. And I have seen the poor social media coordinator go, oh, crap. And then they've got to spin their wheels because how do you prove that post did it when really it was that post in combination with the emails, the display ads, the phone calls from the AEs, like it all works in concert.
it's a
it
And
does.
long
so
game collaboration. Exactly.
And as an organic social marketer, I have had to have that very frank conversation where I can write you the best post that your customer loves to death. If you can't convert it, that's on you.
Well,
That's not
okay,
my
so
fault.
you like the little military terms, Army Corps of Engineers. The solution to pollution is dilution. And that's your top of funnel clogging statement there.
Mhm.
You're how many, like, why are we not focusing on the conversion rate? This gets back into the whole return on investment, customer
Mhm,
acquisition
mhm.
cost. Everybody's racing to be acquired right now. So I'll go back to the behemoth scenario. Your value only happens at cashing out. We've all had stock options and RSUs that have zero value because the company was never purchased. So I get it. I get the explosive burning of cash to look big, to get acquired and be done with it. But I don't know. I'm rambling. I've lost my mind. But like seriously, what leadership doesn't have the same understanding of your role. Leadership doesn't have the same, they might put metrics on you, but the metrics are things that they for some reason dreamed up affect whatever their metrics are.
Yep.
And they often don't, like having 6 new qualified leads specifically from organic social this quarter or closed one.
And to that point, the most successful teams I've seen for organic social specifically, they're at the larger orgs where they can't say 100% for certain, I made these 5 accounts join, but they can say directionally, when I do these things, that happens. They can say directionally, we've got kind of some guiding principle because if I go dark for a month, we don't see this action. But if I start doing my thing, investing in my community with these organic social media posts, then we start seeing that happen. And that's a lot of real fuzzy numbers that everyone is hoping advance the total cause. And if the total cause is revenue and making sure that ARR, MRR, whatever number we're using, if that's all going the right direction, and it's the second that MRR stalls, it's the second that ARR drops off. And that's where you start seeing everybody panic and trying to justify their seat at the table. And that's when the silos happen. And that's when everybody battens down the hatches and goes to war against sales and marketing.
Yeah. I mean, so
Again, are
can
we
we
accomplishing what you wanted?
you know what? It's a conversation. I come up with grand ideas and the that's great. I'm essentially the engineer that does something impulsively that maybe people do or don't want. And the only way for me as a little scientist to figure that out is to throw it at spaghetti throws, see if it sticks.
Mm,
And sometimes you do that with small micro things like this. And sometimes you do it I don't do it with very large things because I'm very cheap and frugal. But sometimes you have to experiment. You have to say like, "Hey, what happens if I throw this out? Is this how people this is peak messaging testing, right? Is this how people see it? Is this how my group of affinity registers what I'm saying? Is this where their mind goes to?" And that's the number one reason why I hate scripted things is because I'm not here to tell you what I think in the first place. Yeah, I'd like to like say my little soundbite that I thought sounded so clever, but like that's ego, and that's not results. That's not revenue for sure. And it's experimentation. It's learning, and if we aren't so more cliches coming out of my mouth. It's that time of day. But if we aren't learning, we're dying. If you aren't growing, you're dying. And you've got to be willing to be wrong.
well, and to that point, I think you also need to be willing to write down before you launch your test, what does success look like? What am I testing?
Yeah. Get those KPIs, those OKRs, get that framework. What are the guardrails? How do I know if I failed? Do
Right.
I? Was I wrong on even calling a failure a failure? You got it. Maybe postmortem is a little strong to like practice, but you've got to like have some retrospective.
So is that the statement, go up when you're pushing uphill? Is it why? You just ask why? What's the point?
You
What
know,
what is it supposed to do?
I want to be able to ask that more often. A lot of times that's a dangerous question
Why?
because while I hear you, imagine it sounds like the 3-year-old asking the parent, "Why? Why? Why?" And I feel like oftentimes the executive suite isn't here for your questions
But the executive suite is standing over your shoulder going, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" So meet
from
meet
your
them
lips
at
to
their
God's ears.
meet them at their intellectual level. If that's what's going on in your world. I don't know. They can't fire everybody. They're trying to.
They're trying to.
Mm,
But at the same time, the expectation I feel like from C suite in a very nondescript way is that they they want you to be I'm trying to I I've been told to come with solutions, not problems. And I feel like, yes, there should be an open door. And this comes back to culture and this comes
mhm,
back
mhm.
to ego and leadership and what real leadership really is. That if they aren't willing to help you, like to get to the solutions on your own, then you can never bring them solutions because they haven't even defined what the problem is, or and maybe they don't know what they don't know. But it's got to be both. There's got to be the balance of the why and the this is what you should do because of the why. Um,
Well, and I
it's
think it's easy for us to bash the executive suite just as the people that are against us, but I think the problems we're encountering exist within the CXO level, and
Mhm.
they're happening there. You're seeing the VP of sales go toe to toe with the CMO and go toe to toe with the operations and go toe to toe with the CFO, and everyone is trying to get us to the same solution. We're trying to all race to the same goal, but we all have very different ideas. And then we roll up to our leader. And so if I roll up to marketing, then I am going to have the CMO's back. And so whenever sales says something kind of that I don't understand, I'll be like, well, they're just, and then it's all about culture. That's what it all boils down to.
and alignment because also you know I wish we could just black and white this and be like, oh, it's this or that, and that's not the case. It's never the case. It's always nuanced. It's always three-dimensional, four-dimensional. It's always many things at once. So layered on top of what you're saying is the like thing that everyone likes to do is I don't know what they do all day. Go find out. Go find out what they do all day. If you have ever uttered that under your breath because you're annoyed why they're asking you for a bit of information or giving you pushback, go find out what their job to be done is, what their pain points are, what their friction is, and then solve for it. Collaboratively,
Mhm.
facilitate the collaboration. And so coming back to the C-suite idea of like asking but why in their inter, interactions with the other C-suite departments, we got to be able to. Are we supposed to be clairvoyant? Like at some point, it's their job to be uh, doing that with the other departments, and then providing us with the guidance and the leadership. It goes both directions.
And to that point, stakeholder buy-in is probably the biggest thing you'll do in any role because that's going to take the most time. It's that office politics and really breaking down those barriers. And that all has to be done one-on-one. You're doing a project or a presentation, you've got to deliver it to a group of 10 people. To succeed, you likely need to meet with each person individually, show them the presentation 1 hour at a time, and then say, how can I make this better? What questions do you have for me? What did I not ask or what am I not thinking of? And build that buy-in before you ever walk into the room to deliver the presentation and deliver the presentation already knowing how it's going to be received. And it takes so much time. And I just want everybody to be like, look, this is the metrics we're using. Everybody to be like, okay, I get it. And then just deliver it once. Problem is that's not how humans operate.
Well, so now it sounds like every organization needs a personality hire, a chief of staff that is a threshold between a department and the C-suite member for that department to be the glad hander and to be the person that understands everybody's job and to be the translator. I mean, I'm not objecting to it at all. I like the concept. I think there's value in it, but I don't know. How do we get anybody to care? How do we get people to show their vulnerabilities, their weaknesses,
Mm,
what their job is actually to be done? Because then nobody's going to make that hire. There might be one chief of staff for the organization, but not
right.
departmentally.
And that would be lovely to have a translator for each department.
What's the ROI on that? Okay, don't attack me. I'm sorry.
You say that. It's like, but
I
what's the
think the
ROI on the
ROI is
book?
I think the ROI is infinite. I
Yeah.
think it's a negligible
But you
investment.
can't you can't you can't go to the CFO and be like, hey, the ROI on a glad hander is going to be X, Y, and Z. You can't do that. Like there you can, but
Tell
you're
you
not going
what,
to get very far.
you
It
can go to
takes
the
a very
CFO and say, "Hey, I'd like to bring somebody in that can help with AR, procurement, accounts payable, collections, customers notifications, pricing and packaging, and unify the messaging and bring the teams together and understand what each individual role does and what the objectives are and align things better. And we will see God, probably a 100% efficiency increase."
So what's the
Deploying something like
CMO's
that. A
job?
CFO would jump on that.
But then what's the CMO's job if it's not what you just said?
CMOs are footstools. Oh my goodness, this is going to be rebroadcast. I'm fine with that. But I have yet to, you've got
What's their executive
a
assistant's
CMO with
job
a
then?
spine just goes by CRO. I mean that's the reality of it. Yeah, I was waiting to get a spit take out of you on that one. But
I mean, I appreciate it. You got close.
you know, yes, a CMO with a spine is called a CRO. That's the reality of it. CMOs are very reactive roles, and it's designed that way. They're informed of product releases last. They're informed of partnerships last, even if partnerships fall under marketing. They're just there for coverage, and it's not fair. And it's also why I don't chase that title anymore because it's not fun either. And you get weird metrics. You get people who don't understand what you do. You get the things where you want closed won deals attributable to single social posts. It doesn't work that way. Marketing is a relationship game. It's a long game.
Yeah.
You don't have kids on the first date. Not only is it physically impossible, it's just psychologically impossible. Same thing with marketing.
So kind of bringing this back to the external world, because we've talked a lot about how GTM motions are truly, even if they're go to market, they have less to do with market than they do with the internal culture and collaboration and product itself. So even though it's supposedly external facing, it's very much an internal playbook and set of rules and paradigms. So marketing as I see it, we just discussed about this like chief of staff kind of person that's like this translator, this facilitator. In my mind, marketing is that translator, is that facilitator from the internal organization to the external world. So we're the chief of staff of customers before they purchase and a little bit after.
I disagree.
Okay.
Marketing rarely touches customers. Teresa mentioned that right early in the call. They're getting all their anecdotal customer information from the sales team who's interacting with them, from the customer service team that's interacting with them. I think marketing just falls to the voice of the brand and the voice of the product.
I mean, we can be, but I think so much more often it's product doing the interviews with the customers. It's the customer success that is actually handling implementation. It's support that's actually treating the bugs that they're encountering. There's typically we're the ones sitting in the corner going, "Yeah, this is a cool picture. We're going to send it out."
Oh, here's my data printout. I gotta look at my data. I have to attribute with my look. I got 600 badge scans. Like name three of the names on those 600. Name one conversation you had with somebody. You didn't. You leaned against the table, handed out T-shirts, and insisted on scanning a QR code with some rented box. And that's not marketing. I think that's a bigger motion. I think that's the biggest. I think the biggest issue we're hitting on is the it depends. All nine of those. It depends. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anyone that you approach, you have to do well. Any one of those that you approach, your team has to be ready. Any one of those that you approach, you have to have a transparent, active organization. Those nine don't matter. You can be successful in any one of them if you have your shit together.
And that brings up something that I think about often outside of work. I've trained martial arts for a long time, literally over a decade. And the only difference between this was one of those posters in a dojo, but the only difference between a white belt and a black belt is the black belt kept showing up. It's just basics. You can know a lot of great, cool things, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how firm are your basics. Doesn't matter what you do. If your basics are solid, you can build an incredible function.
I think this is just life advice 101. Show up, do a good job, keep doing it. And I think that humans aren't consistent, and some even less so. Um, but consistency, that's how you build relationships. That's how you get from the first date to the kids. That's how you get from the, oh, I heard your name once, or, oh, yeah, I got a email, I ignored it. But it's the consistency and the showing up. And I think if there's any muscle to keep working time after time after time, it's showing up and getting better at the basic shit. Says the girl that put a Pokemon ball in a presentation.
It could have been pumpkin spice.
I think that it turned out to be cute, and sometimes that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been a lively debate. Um, what
I've
are
loved your snark and your spice, Peter. It's been lovely.
You're welcome.
I think you two should be friends. But today, it is Tuesday, August 27th. For the rest of 2025, what is the one thing that you hope that is related to GTM motions for the world? The world piece of GTM motions.
I would say I would want alignment between marketing and insert department here. We can't shoulder it all. We have to be working in conjunction with others.
Everybody be nicer to each other. A little
Yeah.
bit of empathy, and the with that empathy, being receptive to being asked questions.
Yeah. I dialogues require questions. All right. Thank you so much for both of you taking the time to have this conversation with me and entertaining this very impulsive, I want to talk about this, so let's make it extra kind of thing. Um, my normal sign off would be asking people if they want to get in touch with you, how can they do that? Let's just do it. Let's just have someone wants to find Teresa. How do they find you?
Oh gosh, I am active on LinkedIn. I have a very different presence on TikTok. I would say probably ignore that, um, even though it's the more fun personality. But reach out on LinkedIn, Teresa Potratz. It's spelled there's a pot rat with a Z at the end.
Hard act to follow. Peter, how do people find you?
A very active LinkedIn presence, and a very different TikTok. The TikTok's probably more interesting than the LinkedIn. Not trying to rip you off. They're both Peter-led growth, just super easy. LinkedIn.com/in/Peter-led growth. TikTok.com/Peter-led growth. But yeah, there we go. Good times.
There we go. I'm going to press end stream. I'm sure that we can still chit chat, but thank you.